America. Hello, Ukraine. Hello, Armenia. Hello, all Christians. Christians, Europeans, all supporters, champions of European Western civilization. Today, we will speak with my great friend and brother, a paladin of President of United States of America, Donald Trump, Joel Taney. And we'll speak about very important key topics. We will start, I think, from your crucial, important visit to Ukraine and your impressions, your visions, what you would like to tell us, dear Joel.
Well, thank you so much, Tigran, for having me on. And I must thank you from the outset of this broadcast for really suggesting and encouraging me to go to Ukraine, and of course to our dear friend Robert. And you guys worked together to orchestrate that I had a successful visit to really get to see Ukraine for myself, to see what's happening there. So I just want to thank you as a friend and a brother, because you opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah, thank you very much for us, for me. You know that Ukraine is number one for me, and Armenia is number one for me, and relations with USA is number one for me. And for me, it
Hmm.
was very important to organize this visit for you because after you come back to USA, you will speak with a lot of congressmen, senators, and I hope you will correspond all your visions to the president, to the vice president, to the all staff of President Donald Trump. It's very important.
Hmm.
Your
Hmm.
impressions, your visions. And what is your vision concerning the status of situation now, about perspectives and your forecast, what it will be?
Mm, such a good question. Thank you. I'm very happy to be back in the States. I arrived yesterday, and I'm back in Iowa now, and I'm looking forward to my visit to Washington. I'm very excited for that, and I have a report that I've been compiling on my visit to Ukraine and everything that I saw, which I'm sending directly to White House personnel and the assistant to President Trump. When we look at U.S. foreign policy, I think it's really important to kind of view this whole conflict through a historical lens, so we can kind of gain more understanding. We can't just look at the conflict over the last 3 years. You really have to kind of understand how Russia operates. And I've said this in other broadcasts, and I've been hated for it, but I'll say I do have Russian friends, and I love Russians, and I love Ukrainians. But let me move on from that, because what's going on is the Russian government is terrible. An oppressive government. And what this really comes down to, Tigran, it's not just a matter of war that we're dealing with. It's a matter of human rights abuses, and territorial integrity. Ukraine is a sovereign nation that was invaded by Russia. And I think we have to look at the tactics of Russians over the last 100 years. I've said before on one of your broadcasts that Russians have never been friends to Armenia. And I can back that up historically speaking. There's a term that's often used, that they are white Turks. And I would have to agree with that. Russian aggression is extreme aggression. It's something that you see only in radical Islamic extremist groups like the Taliban, Al Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, Boko Haram, etc. The kind of defiling and dehumanizing acts that they do during war or during conflict is quite extreme. And it's the worst level of human violence that we can see. And what's going on right now in Ukraine is the Russians aren't simply attacking military outposts or military personnel. They're not just simply fighting a war, but they're trying to destroy the moral spirit, the morale of the Ukrainian people, especially the military. And how are they doing that? Well, they're attacking schools, they're attacking hospitals, they're attacking playgrounds. I was in Kiev when the bombing happened at the kindergarten, and those children were killed. I've seen some of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, and I'm still processing all of those things mentally and emotionally. And the devastation and loss in Ukraine is unimaginable. I was in the Donbass region. I spent more than a week on the front lines uh, with the military. I was in the trenches. I got to see some amazing operations. But I want to go back to Russia for a second and US foreign policy on Russia, if I may, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Yesterday, 2 days ago, Russia killed 20 people in Kryvyi Rog and 10 children.
Mhm. Yeah.
They attacked practically a kindergarten by
Yes.
ballistic missiles.
I was
This is
there.
Russia. This is Russia. And yesterday, two Chinese soldiers and officers were arrested
Mhm.
because they fight for Russia.
Mhm.
And basing the appeal of Ukrainian president, a lot of Chinese, basing the information of investigation service, fight for Russia now.
Mhm.
Does it mean that China is military way participated, not only support by economically, not only support financially, but participate the war?
Mhm.
It's awfully the Chinese soldiers, officers fight against Ukraine supporting Russia.
Yeah.
I think it's changed a lot of things. Concerning Ukraine and Russia, I would like to stress the next. You know that during hundreds of years, Russia tried to occupy Ukraine.
Of course.
You know, more than 100 years ago, when Russia General Army enters the Kiev, they killed my relatives in the center of Kiev.
Yeah,
They killed,
millions, millions.
yeah, they killed the husband of the sister of my grandfather in his home.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
his daughter was only 2 months and remained alone. And my grandfather take care of her all 20 years. It's
Yeah.
Russians. It was not now. It was
Right.
105 years ago. It's
Mm.
Russia. It's real Russia. Concerning Armenia, you know that Russia did everything. Why Armenia lost Western Armenia? Because
Mhm.
Russia assists Turks in genocide.
Of
Because Russia
course.
attacked Armenia
I mean, we look
during
at
genocide.
we look at the military occupation, Russian occupation, liberation of Van, and then when they pulled out the troops, they left those Armenians in Van defenseless against Turkish invaders, occupiers, and annihilators. And so, Russia has had an entire history of being anti-Armenia. They destroyed the first republic of Armenia and assimilated them into the Soviet Union, of course, as well. They sent Russian peacekeepers, and I was there immediately after the war in 2021. And when I met with the Russian peacekeepers, I greeted them in Russian because it was during Pascha, which is Easter, and I greeted them in Russian saying "Christos voskres,"
Mhm.
and they yelled at me and they said, "No, Jesus hasn't risen because he never died on a cross to begin with." And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You guys are Russians. We share the same faith." And they said, "We are Chechens."
Mm.
And so I said, "Okay, so wait, Moscow sent Chechens to defend and protect Christians in Nagorno Karabakh against Azeri aggression? This is Russian peacekeeping forces for you."
Everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah. So
Uh,
let me just I want to go into US foreign policy concerning Russia. And I
okay.
want to give just a brief detailed history if I may. I mean, if we look at the 1917 to 1933, the US State Department would not and refused to recognize the Bolsheviks, refused to recognize that government. We had the Red Scare in 1919 to 1920. We saw the infiltration of communism and communistic ideals infiltrating Hollywood. There was the CIA was involved, the FBI was involved because communists were infiltrating the American media. And then, of course, you fast forward. to the 1940s, I believe it was 1947 or so, we developed the Truman Doctrine, which was we wanted to see the containment of Soviet communism from spreading. In 1948, 1949, we had the formation of NATO, and the State Department condemned the Soviet aggression. And that was the reason why we formed NATO. It was to keep the Soviet Union from growing and to support democracies and territorial integrity of nations. Also, the human rights of individuals, which were being violated under the Soviet Union. And then also we had the Korean War, and the Korean War. The whole entire reason why we got involved in that whole entire thing was the Koreans were this whole communism idea was Soviet communism that came in there, and they were backed by the Soviets. After the Soviet or after the Korean War, in the 2000s, we had major concerns over the freedom of press. We saw the decline or backsliding of democratic values and democracy in Russia under Vladimir Putin. And then 2008, we saw Russia invade Georgia, and we had the Georgian Russian War, and we condemned Russia during that. And in 2014, we had the annexation of Crimea. Um, and we imposed massive sanctions on Russia because of that. And then we had the Skripal poisoning in the UK, right? And we supported the British claims that they were saying there was this chemical poisoning, and we expelled the Russian diplomats. Historically, we have not had good relations with Russia. Historically, the United States and the American people have seen Russian expansionism and Russification as one of the worst things in modern history. And it's something that we've always stood against. So when I went into Ukraine unbiased about the political situation. And ultimately, I'm America first. I'm going to stand with my president. I love President Trump. I know him personally, and he's a great man. And I believe in his leadership. So I stand with him. Um, Yet, with that being said, when I went into Ukraine with the understanding of the history of the region, the understanding of the Russian forces, the Russian government over the last 100 plus years, how Russia works, how the Kremlin works. And when I went into Ukraine, I had some ideas of what I would see, some horrific things. But this, what I saw over the last couple of weeks in Ukraine, completely went beyond my expectations of how horrific the Russians were to the Ukrainian people. For example, I met the head of a ministry um, in the church of Ukraine who shared with me the details of rape victims by Russian soldiers, ages 4 to 87 years old, many of them mentally handicapped or deficient individuals, some with Down syndrome, etc. And they're working very hard to help these victims and to restore them mentally, cognitively, and emotionally after such traumatic violence was done to them. We see what happened in Bucha, and going there, I was there on the anniversary of the massacres there in Bucha, and I was there at the mass grave sites, and it
Yeah.
was such an emotional experience, Tigran. I can't even begin to tell you how crazy it was. I mean, just to see the horrors that were inflicted on civilian personnel, not military, and that civilian homes were targeted and priests were shot in the back of the head.
Yeah. You was with three great men there. You met Artyom that organized very serious drone plunger and push it. You was with Robert, he's a hero, and fight to secure Ukraine from 2014. 11
He's
years.
he's
11 years.
unbelievable. I mean, this guy, he is such a hero to me and an older brother. And I talked to him today. Actually, we talked about my upcoming trip to Armenia.
Yeah.
And this man, I mean, he was amazing. He
Yeah.
was brave. He was
Yeah.
courageous. We
Yeah.
were almost taken out by a drone strike on the front lines.
Yeah. I know.
But this man, he's unique. He's a unique individual, and I think Ukraine should be very proud that they have such a leader in their ranks. I mean, unbelievable hero,
Yeah.
amazing tenacity, fortitude, courage, perseverance, strength. The guy is a very strong man, and he had me at his house one night for dinner, and his wife was one of the best cooks I have ever seen. I mean, that Ukrainian feast that she made for us was out of this world, and he has a very beautiful family. I love Robert a lot. He's great.
Yes, yes. You saw the real Ukraine, you saw the real threats, you saw that Russians, they crush, kill, and rape and make plunder everywhere. For action. Plundering, raping, killing, yeah,
Yeah, it's
and,
so
and
horrible.
crushing. It's everything that Russia render to other nations for direction.
It's just devastating. I'm going to try not to get emotional on this broadcast, but when I came into on my way into Ukraine, I was on this train from Bucharest, Romania. I went to Chisinau, Moldova, and then from Moldova to Ukraine. And on the train, I met this woman, and she told me, "I I wish I could kiss and hug every single Ukrainian soldier." And I looked at her, and I didn't know why she said that, and it didn't make sense to me because she's Moldovan. And I said, "Oh, do Moldovan women find Ukrainian men attractive?" And she said, "Well, they are, but that's besides the point." She
You
said,
know,
"I want to hug and kiss every one of them because I have a dream. I have a life, I have a family, I have a home that I love, and Ukraine is the last defense for the sovereign nations which surround Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Slovakia, Moldova,
yeah,
Romania." And
yeah.
she said, "Those guys aren't just fighting for their homeland, they're fighting for us. They're fighting for all of Eastern Europe."
Yes, really, really, Ukrainian soldiers and officers, they fight for the whole Europe, for the whole Europe. But what Europe? Today I listen that Europe intend to cut free trade agreement with Ukraine. It's a kind
Yeah.
of support of Ukraine. It's very strange. And the leadership of Europe told that will render $800 billion. But they next day they forget about it. They told and forget. And what's happened with Europe, Joel? They think only about Islamization of Europe, about migration and Islamization. It's number one. And second, about genders, to create
Yeah.
from 100 genders 200 genders. I think
Mhm.
Europe, you don't think that Europe think about mainly two things. One goal is Islamization of Europe and solidarity, that they organize solidarity of migration. And second is uh, produce new genders, yeah, to decrease creation of families, to kill European values, and so. What's happened with Europe?
Yeah. It's really unbelievable. It's really sad what's taking place. I just saw that an Easter program was canceled in a UK school in order for them to be more inclusive of other faiths. And I guess inclusivity works only for people who are non-Christian because we're not welcomed and the Christians are abhorred in UK and in Scotland and in France. They're persecuted, they're targeted, they're arrested. You have thought police now in England. And so when it comes to these kind of things, and JD Vance made that very famous speech to the European powers, and he's like, "Hey, like it used to be American European values," but he said, "You guys don't even share the same values anymore." And one of the propaganda tools from Russia that we've seen in the United States, which has brought many of the national uh, Americans onto the side of Russia because of their heavy propaganda has been that Ukraine is a fascist country with a fascist government. They're pro LGBTQ. There's transgenders everywhere. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to appeal to those who are in power in the United States, which is the right and the conservative right. Thank God. And then they present Putin as the epitome of masculinity. And so you see a lot of these videos on TikTok and Instagram and X and Telegram and everywhere else showing Putin as this guy who's very religious, a faithful Orthodox Christian. He's taking ice baths. He's he's submerging himself into the ritual of the Russian Orthodox Church for cleansing in the frozen river. You know, he's riding on horseback, shirtless, and a former KGB agent and massive hunter and fisherman, and so he's presented to the uh, conservative Christian right as this guy who's pro religion, pro Christian freedom, who's the epitome of masculinity. And so, for any normal guy who can't see through BS and propaganda, I mean, to someone like me, a father of 6 kids, who hunts and fishes and does all those things. And, I have my Christian faith. Somebody like Vladimir Putin through this propaganda could really appeal to somebody like me. But at the end of the day, it's propaganda to elevate this guy who has no morality, no dignity, and no principle, and is only about one principle, and it's his legacy as being the most powerful leader of Russia in Russian history, to re-expand Russia to not to the time of the Soviet Union, but he's looking to have complete Russification, like the policy that was under the Tsar, where they were forcing Ukrainians to speak Russian and forcing
Yes,
all the people
yeah,
under the Tsarist
sure,
empire, including
sure,
Georgians, to speak Russian.
sure.
This is
I would,
Russification and expansionism.
yes, I would like to tell you, my mother is native Kievite, and I spoke Ukrainian from my birth without any problem, as in my family. But that time, when you spoke Ukrainian, it was a policy of harassment, the same as far possible against Gaelic language in Scotland and Irish language. It was such policy to suppress Ukrainian speaking population. Anyway, in my yard, in Kiev, it was approximately uh, majorities that spoke Russian because it was
Hmm.
suppression. And when I was young boy, I visit Russian Orthodox Church, and they asked me, "What is my name?" I told Tigran. They told, "You are not Christian." I told, "What? I am. I represent the nation of first Christians.
Right.
We are creators of Christianity. You told me after 1,000 years adopt Christianity that I am not Christian." I was very young. I told our patriarch, 40, create Russian Orthodox Church.
Hmm.
And he told, "No, I will not possess you to pray in church and have a candle there because you have not a Christian name." And you met the
Yeah.
same, yes? As I know, you met the same
Y-
situation.
Yeah, well, part of the propaganda that we've received here in the States, Tigran, and this is one of the big efforts of my whole entire visit. People have tried to say you've been funded by Ukrainians, you're being bought out to push our Ukrainian narrative. Well, none of that's true. None of that's true. I make a very meager salary as a minister for an organization that I happen to be the president of. And I went there just to cut through the BS and to look for myself to see. And I refuse to go on any propaganda tour with any state officials and for them to show me around. I went amongst the people. And I'll just say one of the main elements of the propaganda that Russia is pushing is that Ukraine is persecuting and targeting Christian believers of various denominations and faiths. and that they are the liberators of Ukraine so that they can have freedom of religion. The people want Russia to liberate them. I met with thousands of Ukrainians in my time in Ukraine, and not one of them told me, I want Russia to liberate Ukraine from our fascist government. None of them said that they were being persecuted. I met with all the heads, Tigran, of every single major denomination in Ukraine. I met with the heads of the Baptist Convocation. I met with the heads of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. I met with the chief rabbi of Ukraine. I met with the Pentecostals and the Assembly of God in Ukraine. I met with all of these individuals and we prayed together, we worshiped together, we encouraged one another, we talked about peace together. Um, and I asked them point blank. I also met with the Catholic Bishop of Ukraine. Is the Ukrainian government targeting Christian believers, persecuting them for their faith, and telling them they cannot worship? And they said, no, no, that's not true at all. I said, well, what about the Russian Orthodox Church under the Patriarchate of Moscow? Are you guys closing their doors? Are you guys infiltrating their churches and locking them up and boarding them up and arresting the parishioners? And they said, well, no, that's not true. However, there have been some churches that were either storing military ammunition or working as spies for the Russian government that were under the Orthodox Patriarchate of Moscow, and those ones were closed. And that's interesting because, you look at what Patriarch Kirill said. He said, this is a holy war, and that the Ukrainian Orthodox and all those heretics and schismatics, meaning all those who don't belong to the Russian Patriarchate, they're heretics. They're not even real believers. And so if you wage war in Ukraine, you're doing a holy thing. So he's called this a holy war and has encouraged the Russian Orthodox faithful, many of them who are very good people, into a moral, what would you call that? Um Absolution,
Yeah.
a total absolution of any crimes that they may inflict on Ukrainians. And that is absolutely unheard of. He is acting like he is a caliph of an Islamic caliphate. That is how he's acting. And so he is no patriarch at all. He's created a schism within Orthodoxy. It's absolutely terrible. So I went into a Russian Orthodox monastery that was supposed to have been closed down, quote unquote, where the parishioners were supposed to have been targeted and arrested, quote unquote. It's one of the holiest Orthodox, Russian Orthodox monasteries in Ukraine under the Patriarchate of Moscow. And when I went there, they had Vespers going. I have all the videos for anyone who doesn't believe me. They had Vespers, they were in full operation. The monks and the priests were worshiping together with the parishioners. And when I went up to one of the priests to get a blessing, he refused to bless me. And the only thing that I could say was it was either because he saw I was wearing an Armenian cross that I wear all the time,
Oh, yeah.
or or because he saw me in a Ukrainian military uniform.
Yeah, sure, sure. But you don't surprise because Patriarch Kirill is a FSB general. He must act such way. Yeah, because
Yes,
he's a Russian officer. Yeah, fellow
of
Russian
course.
officer. He must be wild and barbaric. It's normal. Yeah. Really, Joel, a lot of years I was involved on the first line in the internal affairs, in security issues, and I never met any fascist in Ukraine. I never, I never had any information about fascists in Ukraine. But in Russia, act hundreds fascist Nazi organization.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Russians told that Ukrainian are fascist, pushing and promoting fascism. It's a kind of very unprecedented, ironic, uh, kind of, I don't know how to call it, but it's a fantastic. Russian are fascist, and they are condemn Ukraine that Ukrainians are fascist. But we never have any fascist movement, any fascist activists in Ukraine. We never had it.
They
And you
can't even
saw,
define what a fascist is.
yeah, it's awfully, it's really awfully how the Russian acts. Uh, Now we see, when some analytics experts told me, well, Donald Trump told that he will finish the war, but war is not finished. But today I saw that oil price decrease to 64 barrel. Does it mean that Donald Trump is act supporting Ukraine? Because Russia decreased its possibility to buy weapons.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump really decided to solve all issues with China because China is the captain of Russians. Who are the Russians? They're slaves of China. And when I think Donald Trump will solve situation with China, it will be automatically China will give command to Russians to stop. Also because China, under the in these circumstances, could not finance Russians, could not render economic aid, a lot of things, but nobody would like to think and analyze the reality.
Right.
What do you think about it? And before the China, I would like to put forward. Before the China, I would like to put forward the issue. I'm 100% confident that Donald Trump will stop the war and stop the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And I'm very proud that I know you, the persons that now will inform all leadership of USA concerning the real situation, what's happened in Ukraine, how to Russia is exterminate a European nation in the center of Europe. And my issue is the next. What do you think when it will be a peace treaty or temporary peace treaty uh, established? When it will be confirmed? What is your opinion?
Well, I believe by September, this whole entire war is going to be completely wrapped up. Can't really go into all the details as to why I believe that.
Yeah,
Um, but from the
I understand.
intelligence that I have, I think that there's going to be the reality of it is even without any U.S. or European support, Ukraine's MOD, Ministry of Defense, they have the capabilities. The Ukrainian military has the capabilities to defend Ukraine for a year without any support from Europe or from America. And if we look at the death tolls of the war, we have more than 200,000 Russians that have been killed. The official numbers, which we know from various intelligence sources, that Russia isn't even giving the official number. It's far more than what Russia is saying. But it's more than double the Ukrainian damage. If you were to put the soldiers and the civilians that have died in Ukraine together, um, Russia's death toll is way higher in this war. And I think part of that is their inability to fight, not very good training, and the Ukrainians are better at the drone warfare. Um, and I've seen that up front, very, very upfront and close. So I think that that's one thing that I have to say in the outset as to why I think this war is going to wrap up very quickly. It just has to do with the human life casualty aspect. Uh, at this point, the Russians are getting tired of the war, and Russia's a big enough country as it is. Also, we look at uh, the favorability of President Trump in Russia. Most Russians love him, and it's not because he has some great relationship with Putin. They love him because they saw what the rest of the world saw when he got shot in July and he got back up and he pounded his fist in the air and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." Now, with
Uh,
all the propaganda they saw of Vladimir Putin, their leader, riding horseback, shirtless, hunting, fishing, going into ice rivers, X, Y, and Z, going into the church, that those images don't stick in their mind the way the image of Trump's near assassination sticks in their mind. So they look at Trump as this guy who's able to negotiate. He's strong, he's tough, and most Russians respect him. So I believe what's going to end up happening, and this is my hypothesis, is I believe that when Russia finally does come to the negotiating table, Putin's going to see it as very bad PR for him in Russia to go against the offer that Trump presents, the peace negotiation that Trump presents. And he'd be very unpopular in Russia to go against that. The other thing um, is that right now, like I said before, without any US or European intervention, Ukraine can defend itself for another year. Ukraine actually is winning this war. The occupied region of Bucha was, of course, deoccupied. We look at the Donbass region; they're gaining ground in Donbass. They're pushing back the Russian forces, um, and they're keeping the front, which is incredible considering the amount of personnel that is on the front line. So I think Russia, unless they involve nuclear power, they're not going to win this war. If they have nuclear strikes on Ukraine, they could win, but without that, they're not going to.
Yes, completely agree with you. You know, a Ukrainian nation needs support of USA. Ukrainian nation needs support of President Donald Trump. Ukrainian leadership now needs support because it's very difficult, the situation in Ukraine. Everybody, all powers in Ukraine, nation, children, soldiers, everybody, we need support and moral support and financial support and peaceful support. And we believe that America will do all the best in this situation because Ukrainian army also is a bulwark against enemies of United States of America here.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Ukrainian army is a bulwark against enemies of USA. That's why, dear Joel, uh, I ask you do everything to close the relations between Ukraine and USA, basing your influence, your talent, and basing your honest heart. That I would like to tell you, my dear
Thank you.
brother and friend.
I'm going to do whatever I can. I mean, this report is going to be very significant and huge, and I have a lot of footage from being on the front lines and the devastation as well. The American people need to see it. And the reality of the situation, Tigran, is there's not enough journalists in Ukraine that are actually talking about the daily drone strikes that are happening in Kiev. This stuff isn't being publicized. For some reason, the media has seemed to back out in their support for Ukraine, and that needs to shift. But I think we're going to see a shift very quickly, and I'm working towards that end.
Yeah, yeah, dear Joel. Yes, you could. I think you would like to welcome everybody whom you met in Kiev. Yes, because especially Robert, yes, and others, you have this
Yeah,
possibility, and then continue to next topics.
yeah, yeah. I just want to say thank you, especially to Robert, to Sasha, to of course our wonderful brother Artem and um, Artash and all of these amazing people that really that showed me a very amazing side of Ukraine and also showed me Ukraine's worst, but gave me a complete and full perspective as to the reality that Ukrainians are living in every single day. Uh, the Ukrainian people are amazing, and you guys know who you are. The rest of you, I don't need to even say your names, but you guys were wonderful, and thank you for treating me with so much hospitality and love and kindness. And it really goes a long way. I mean, first impressions are everything. That's what we say in the states. And my impression of Ukraine was incredible. It was my first impression, and I thank all those people who helped to facilitate that. I got to meet with Pastor Mark Burns, who is a spiritual advisor to President Trump, and he was there also on a delegation tour of Ukraine. We met together with all the faith leaders. We spoke together about our work and why we're there, what we're doing, and we're collaborating, and it's very powerful. Um, so I want to say thank you to Pastor Mark because he
Yeah.
actually went to visit some of the devastated sites as well. He wasn't on the front lines, but he thanked me for going. I mean, not too many people just want to say, "Hey, let's go to the front lines," but I thought it was imperative for me to see the soldiers, some of them who had been in the trenches for more than 3 months, who hadn't seen their families, and I remember I was having dinner with them in the barracks in the trenches, and at one point they asked me, well, how long are you going to stay? And I said, oh, I- I've been gone a long time. And they said, how long have you been gone from your family? I said, I've been gone 20 days, and I need to get back home to my family, and so I don't think I'm going to stay in Ukraine too much longer. And one of the soldiers looked very disappointed, and I said, "You want me to stay longer?" He said, "No, it's not that. It's just I've been in the trenches for 4 months. I haven't seen my wife and my kids because I'm trying to defend my country." And he said, "I wish that it had only been 20 days since I had seen them." And so that really put things into perspective for me as well, Tigran. And I'm doing whatever I can to help.
Yes,
But
I
I
know.
think,
I know.
I think part of it is somebody like you with such a love for your country, so much patriotism, and having worked in the government, in the intelligence sector, and all of these various things, uh, you're such a capable human being, and you're a brilliant man, and you have certain giftings that not a lot of people possess in government, and it's your communication skills, right? You're very charismatic, you're easy to talk to, you're fun to be around, and likability is very important. But a lot of times people with a lot of social intelligence aren't very don't have a lot of mental acumen whatsoever. And so the weird thing about you, or the strange or peculiar thing I could say, is that not only are you mentally brilliant, but you have a lot of amazing social gifting. You're super socially intelligent, which just makes you a class A individual. And so I think Ukraine could really benefit by having you in some form of government. And I'd like to tell the United States, if Ukraine doesn't want Tigran, we ought to get him working for us because he's incredible. So I just want
Ah,
to say that about you, bro. I really, really think you're a
thank you,
phenomenal
my brother.
individual.
Thank you. Thank you. All my blood, all my heart, with Ukraine, yeah, with Kiev, and Ukraine is all time is my soul. And
Hmm.
I think I do everything that I could to support Ukraine state, to support Ukraine as a civilization, because Ukraine is an integral part of Western world. Impossible think about West, about Europe without Ukraine. And
Yeah.
all Europeans also must understand it that now Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian officers, they fight for the whole Western world, not only
Yeah.
for Ukraine, not only for Ukraine. Let's and pray and act, and Ukraine
Yeah.
will win. Will win.
Yes.
Never barbaric Russia will win Ukraine. Never.
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
It's amazing.
Ukraine is going to win this war. Russia will
Yeah.
lose this war, and I'm completely confident in that. And I think what the Ukrainian government is looking for, and what Volodymyr Zelensky is looking for, is he's looking for a just peace. And a just peace means the pulling back of Russian troops from Crimea, from Donbass, and giving the territory back to Ukraine. And I agree with that. Whatever peace deal leads to that, Ukrainian territory, the territorial integrity of Ukraine being intact, that's the peace deal I'm for. And Russians pulling back the troops. And I think Ukraine should continue to fight for that peace deal. We don't need Russia occupying any Ukrainian territory, which belongs to the integrity of the Ukrainian borders. Um, We need Russia to completely pull back. Russia's large enough. We don't need Russian expansion in Eastern Europe. We don't need Russification. We don't need Russia. 95% of Estonians speak Russian, by the way. And the reality is Estonia has the right to self-determination, to their independence, to uh, territorial integrity. And Putin's setting his eyes on Estonia. And if he takes Ukraine, he won't stop there. He'll take Georgia. For sure he will, especially with Georgia's new government. He'll take Armenia, a weakened Armenia, for sure. He will take Estonia. He will take Latvia. He will take Moldova. He will take Romania because he can.
Yeah,
If he wins Ukraine, I mean, it's just going to bolster his confidence. I mean, if he's able to get 150,000 Korean troops, and now we see that they're Chinese that are fighting.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
we don't
yeah.
know exactly where this will go. So, while I do believe Ukraine will win this war, I think it's going to happen because the Western powers are going to unite in some really amazing way for Ukraine. And they're going to have to if Russia continues its aggression and expansion policies. Um, I want to talk about Armenia briefly as well. I mean, Armenia for me is number one next to my country, America. And Armenia is going through some crazy political shifts, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. And now you see what's happened. Finalizing today our Ukrainian case. It's crucial issue concerning integrity of Ukrainian territory. Crimea, Donbass is integral part of Ukraine. And
Right.
Ukraine, I not only completely agree with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, I for me it's impossible, and not only for me, to not share this position because it's Ukrainian land and Crimea and Donbass and basic international law and basic mentality and basic cultural tradition.
Well,
Anyway, it will be liberated. That's why.
it's called Kiev Ruse for a reason. So like
Sure,
Russia came out of Kiev.
sure,
The
sure,
Kiev was the
sure,
biggest city, and the
sure,
Ukrainians wanted the
sure,
self determination and independence. So that's why they've been their
sure.
own self independent country for decades.
Yeah, yeah, really. For me, it's issue number one. The same as for any Ukrainians, the same as for sure Ukrainian president as the person that leads the Ukraine.
Hmm.
Ukraine must be deoccupied from Russian troops. It's number one issue, sure.
Hmm.
And concerning Armenia, you see that Azerbaijan threaten Armenia practically every week, threaten via invasion. Same
Hmm.
problem with Turkey. You know what is the main issue for Armenians? And they ask me also, will USA support and secure Armenia? I answer yes, because you know what I told them. If Donald Trump will not push Azerbaijan and Turkey, they will attack Armenia yesterday.
Yep.
It's my opinion. It's my vision,
100%.
as they know.
Yep. Yep.
But we need something new in this situation. Armenians case with Armenians, the situation with Armenians is very problematic. You know
Hmm.
what's happened in Jerusalem with Armenian lands. You know what's happened in South Caucasus. Everywhere, Armenians has a problem. What to do? What is your forecast? What will be? What necessary to do? What will be the future, dear Joy?
Mm. Well, that's a great question, Tigran. I'll just start with this. I just heard a confirmation from uh, our future congressman. He's running for Congress. He's going to do very well. David Pouch and his wife Peggy. They are coming with me to my on my official delegation to Armenia on the 20th of April. and he's a huge advocate for Armenia. The biggest thing that I've seen as well, Tigran, is that we have so many people in the U.S. government and the various agencies now that are extremely supportive of Armenians and Armenia, and all those who surround Trump and the people in the faith office are very pro Armenia. So, Armenia, I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon. I think that should it come to it, there will be some sorts of intervention, whether it's massive sanctions and or tariffs on Turkey. You know, I try to remind Armenians when they talk to me about Trump and Turkey, I try to remind them what happened under his first term. You know, with the arrest of Pastor Andrew Brunson, he imposed such tariffs and sanctions on Turkey. He destroyed their economy. He decimated it. And he said, I don't, he said beforehand, he said, I don't want to destroy Turkey's economy, but I will if I have to. I'm not afraid to do it. And he did. I mean, he brought the Turkish lira down 33% because of his tariffs and sanctions that he had placed on Turkey during his first administration. So that's one thing. We talked about Russification and Russian expansionism, but we also see that as a very real threat, which Trump kind of discussed recently, where he said, you know, I get along with Erdogan, but he said, I confronted him and said, hey, this whole operation with the fall of Assad's regime and this new government in Syria, that was because of you. And Erdogan at first denied it with Trump. And he said, no, it's not actually, Mr. President. With all due respect, it's not. And then Trump said, it is, but oh well. you know,
Yeah.
like he knows. And it's not in the State Department's interest to see Turkic expansionism either. And I think Erdogan kind of views himself as this Islamic crusader and new caliph of the Islamic world. And that's why he's involved in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria.
Yeah.
That's why he's killing Christians, murdering them, funding jihadists to do so,
Yeah.
and Kurds. So I don't think, you know, when Trump voices such opinions, that is reflective of the state's policy concerning Turkey. And I just think that's Trump being very diplomatic. He's talking to world leaders, he's talking to people who have serious power and might, and he wants to try and keep the peace, but at the same time, let them know he means business.
Yes, I'm sure. If Trump acts such way against China, what is a turkey? It's a small insect if compared with China for Trump.
Right. And what did he say about Xi Jinping? He said, I've got a lot of respect for Xi. He's so great. He's such a powerful leader. He's got a lot of might. I mean, he's governing a billion people, and that's really hard to do. You got to have something up there if you're going to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, that is just standard Trump rhetoric. And I think that's something that shouldn't surprise anybody when it comes to the rubber meeting the road, as we say in America. Um, Trump's leadership is impeccable, and I think leaders like Erdogan and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin very much respect President Trump, and they fear him, which is even more important.
Yeah. I think now Russia is under the stress when they saw how Donald Trump is pursuing the policy toward China. I think all Russia and Putin, everybody now is in trembling and shock. Uh,
Mhm.
also now you will correct me if I'm not right. Now Christians in power in USA first time
Yeah,
after possible after Abraham Lincoln. It's the first time Christians again became their power in USA. What I would like to ask, if USA possess Muslims now destroyed the first Christian country, I think it's impossible. It's
yeah,
impossible because how it's possible to remain Christians possessing to attack first Christian country when
right.
everything was started. Does it mean I think we need a new policy, and you are a great leader and champion of this policy. And
Mhm.
dear Joel, I, my friends, and my team will support you on this way
Thank
and
you.
support every single willing of President Donald Trump in solving this situation because Armenia need security and peace, same way as
Mhm.
Ukraine, same way as
Mhm.
Georgia, same way as Moldova, security and peace.
Yeah. I think in the USA, we have a Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is celebrated every year to remember the Jewish Holocaust. I learned about the Jewish Holocaust at 5 years old when I watched Schindler's List. It was my first exposure to the horrors of what happened to the Jews in Nazi Germany. And that movie really had an impact on me at a very young age. It was something to see at 5 years old, but I never forgot the film. And I think by the age of 10, almost every American child has learned about the Jewish Holocaust. And that got me thinking, how come we don't have a 1915 Armenian genocide remembrance day for the whole nation? So that's one thing that I'm working on. We got a state genocide remembrance day for the state of Iowa, which was huge. Our governor Kim Reynolds passed that, and I'd like to see that for the nation. So I'm advocating for that. But more importantly, I think it's the U.S. interest, national interest of the American people that helps to shape U.S. foreign policy. And so that the reason why Israel has so much support is because everybody knows about what happened to the Jews
Yes, Joel,
during World
yes.
War II. And so, what is a Zionist? People will call me a Zionist all the time. A Zionist is simply somebody who believes Israel has the right to exist, which I do. I mean, they've been expelled from every nation for centuries and centuries and centuries. And some people will point to the fact because of the central banking systems and Jewish usury, which they don't charge interest among themselves, but to Gentiles, etc. Um, as one of those reasons. But regardless of the fact, we should never be against an entire ethnicity. Otherwise, we are no different than the Turks who ethnically cleansed Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, of the Armenians. So I think we should never have that mentality. Um, Number one, I also think that Israel does have the right to exist because every single place the Jews have been, they've been persecuted, and the Holy Land did belong to them to begin with. And believe that they should have the Holy Land, that they should have their own right to exist, and the state of Israel should exist. But let me tell you something. I don't think it's a one or the other. I don't think you either support Israel or don't support Armenia. What I'm saying is Armenia is the first Christian nation. Why can't we support them as well? Why can't we send billions of dollars to them? We send 4 billion to Israel every single year. Why don't we just send 2 billion to Armenia at least, and give them something to help build up their military defense and capabilities? And so, of course, they passed a strategic partnership. I think it was back in January, the United States with Armenia, and one of those things outlined was for military defense and training and so forth as well, which is very good, but it needs to be expanded, and I'm advocating for that. But I'm also advocating, most importantly, that the Armenian genocide is taught in every school in America. We
Yeah.
see the Department of Education
It's
has
very
failed
important.
American citizens.
It's
It
very
has failed
important.
American citizens, and Americans realize that, and that's one of the reasons why Trump has advocated for the closure of the Department of
Uh,
Education or a total reform. But I believe every single American child should know about the Armenian genocide by the age of 10 years old, just like we
yes.
all learn about the Jewish
Yeah.
genocide or Holocaust
Yeah.
in 1945. So
Yes.
that's one of my main objectives. And why is that important? It's because of the United States, the people of the United States awareness of the Holocaust that we so adamantly support Israel. And if we had the awareness that the term genocide was created by Raphael Lemkin, who happened to be a Jew, based on what happened to the Armenians,
Yeah.
Uh, at the time, they didn't have the word genocide, and
Yeah.
it was ethnic extermination is what they
Yes.
called it, or mass extermination. So
Yes. Yes.
when
Well,
when
yes,
uh,
yes. Yes.
when the prime ministers of Armenia, Nicole Pashinyan, was in, I think, Switzerland, he said we need to look back at the history of why we have termed the mass murder of Armenians as genocide and how that came about. And he said it in a cynical way, as if we shouldn't be recognizing the Armenian genocide or advocating for countries to recognize it. And I took issue with that in a big way, because you have to be somewhat ignorant of the term genocide and how it came about. So Armenians weren't using the term genocide until after it was invented, and it was invented for them. You have to understand that basic principle.
Yeah.
Once you understand
Oh.
that was the invention of the word genocide was based on what happened to the Armenians, and that's why they started doing genocide lobbying, because the term was invented and laws were
Yes.
based off of what
Yes.
happened.
Yes.
Whole entire international laws and the Geneva Convention, et cetera, was
Yeah.
based off of that terminology, which encompassed the whole entire massacre of the Armenians from 1915 to 1923. So
Mm.
all these things I'm working on, and I don't get paid. I don't have mass funders. I don't. My wife and I, we barely get by with our kids, and we are happy with the life that we have. But I'm doing this because at the end of the day, I want people to look back at me in the pages of history books, not because I want to be written in them, but because I want these principles upon which I built my life, which so far in my life, they're so far above anything else. My principles are the highest ideals which I serve. One of those, I believe in human rights. I believe in territorial integrity. I believe in what Woodrow Wilson called in 1919 the right to self-determination, that nations could be formed based not just simply on ethnicity or religion, but based on their right to self determination. They say, we are people, we want this form of government for ourselves, and they should be able to have that form of governance. Um, so, with all those things, that's why I'm fighting and doing what I'm doing, so that one day, not only can I help people in this life, but later on, people will read about my work, my advocacy. They'll read about you and I and our conversations, and they'll be um, pricked at the heart. They'll be convicted themselves to continue to carry on the work that we're doing into the future and continue to stand up for human rights and for Christians all around the world.
Yeah. It's a great job. It's a great. You know, I would like to tell the next. Armenians not need the recognition of genocide. Armenians need eliminate the consequences of genocide.
Mhm.
Consequences. Recognition is nothing. Everybody recognized. USA is recognized. The whole continental Europe is recognized. And what's the
But
next?
recognize isn't just a cognitive understanding that there was a genocide. Recognizing isn't the verbal affirmation that we
Yes.
say, yes, there was a genocide. What is recognition without recompense? What is
Yes.
recognition without restoration
Yes.
and
Uh,
restitution? And
so
those are the
yes.
things that I advocate for.
Yes. I am Western Armenian and Ukrainian. And my land, Western Ukraine, is under the occupation. Our cemeteries is annihilated. Our churches annihilated. Our forts annihilated. Nobody could decide and tell me that genocide it's okay. We make friendship. No, we need eliminate the consequences of genocide. Only such
Mhm.
way. Other way,
It's
it's impossible.
it keeps continuing, and it continues. I mean, the evil becomes pervasive when good men decide to do nothing, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, I've been very quiet about my feelings over the last 4 years of Prime Minister Nicole Pashinyan and my views of his uh, political policies concerning his own country. After all, I'm not an Armenian citizen, so I can't weigh in from an internal perspective. I can only weigh in from an external perspective, from looking the outside looking in. And so, what I've heard from many Armenians is that the government before his was very corrupt, and they were a bunch of oligarchs, Russian oligarchs, and there was all this
Yeah,
corruption and
Russian agents, they were Russian agents. They were
Russian
killers.
agents.
They
Yeah,
were killers.
KGB,
Yeah,
etc.
killers, yes,
And
yeah.
I agree that's true. But I haven't seen his entire government and those who the parliament members that fall under his party be very effective at all in governing the country of Armenia. I think it takes really good strategic leadership to be able to govern a country like Armenia because of where it's geopolitically situated, because of its neighbors. I will say, in my opinion of Nicole, I think he happens to be I believe, a sincere individual. He really means to do the best, but I don't think he's the most capable individual. I don't think he has ill intent or that he himself is a Turk. I just don't think he's capable of governing his country well. That's my personal opinion. I have no ill thoughts towards him, or towards his character, or anything like that. I just don't think he's the man for the job. And I think Armenia needs to find somebody else. I really do. And this is the first time I've said this publicly and live, Tigran, but it needs to be said. And I'm getting ready to take a trip to Armenia. You know, I'm meeting with delegations and various individuals when I'm there. I love the country so much. I don't want to see it fall into ruin. Yes, Armenia needs peace with Turkey and Azerbaijan, but what kind of peace are we talking about here? You have these Armenian citizens from Artsakh, formerly a self-determined state, that have come into Armenia, and it says country of origin on their driver's license, Azerbaijan. This is on the new driver's license in Armenia. Like, there's a lot of conflict and conversation to be had about Artsakh, and I think because of U.S. principle on self-determination hammered out by Woodrow Wilson, Artsakh had every right to be its own republic state. Whether or not it had the support from Armenia or any other nation, they were self determined. And I do believe all nations should have recognized Artsakh and Artsakh's government. But when Nicole came to power during the Velvet Revolution, he said, Artsakh is Armenia. You remember him saying that.
Yes,
But
I remember.
then he said in 2023, he said, Artsakh is Nagorno-Karabakh, and it belongs to Azerbaijan. And so effectively what he said is he said the Armenian government, ethnic Armenian government of Artsakh, they are illegal occupiers on stolen land, when it's clearly always been Armenian land for thousands and thousands of years. You look at all the graves, you look at the Hotchkars, you look at the churches. It's very clear to me that Artsakh was Armenian, and it was majority populated by ethnic Armenians, indigenous Armenians of Artsakh, who have lived there for thousands of years. And what happened under Pashinyan's leadership, I believe, is completely and totally unforgivable. When something like that happens and you allow for the ethnic cleansing of 120,000 people to come into your land, and you don't defend Artsakh, and I, it's inexcusable for me. I think this somebody who's done so much damage, not just to Artsakh, but to Armenia. We look at the tens of thousands. Instead of having stricter anti-abortion policies, he's bringing in tens of thousands of Indians to fill up the workforce because Armenians aren't populating enough, and 22% of all pregnancies are ending in abortion. So he is coming up with solutions, right? And we see he comes up with solutions to all the problems, but all these solutions are terrible solutions, and they're not the right solutions to these problems. And I see him, he is leaning too far into Azerbaijan's demands in this negotiation of the peace deal. And reluctantly, the US State Department were happy about the peace deal because they just want the fighting to end. But they see that the peace deal for Armenia isn't a very much a good deal at all, and there should be a renegotiation of one that's more beneficial for the state of Armenia. If that's going to happen, I don't think so, not under this current prime minister. So I'm hoping that this time Armenians will wake up and get their act together and start to vote for parliamentary members that are of a different party, not a communist party, not a radical party, but a party that's pro Western, pro European, pro American. That's what Armenia needs to be saved. I mean, without US intervention, Armenia is gone, especially under its current leadership. It's gone. And it will be Turkified 100%. 100%.
What I would like to tell you about this, what I think. You see that Great Britain, God the Save King, sure, France, and Ursula von der Leyen completely supports this peace deal. What do you think? They will not push Armenia in this situation, not suppress Armenia to agree with this peace deal, together with Turkey and Russia.
Well, I think everybody's pushing them to agree to this peace deal. And the reasons of that are purely economic reasons. Of course, with this peace deal, it's going to open up commerce and it's going to open up trade. It's going to open up a border between Turkey and Armenia that's likely to happen after the peace deal, Erdogan said. Uh, but I mean, are Armenians going to be comfortable with their occupiers, their mass murderers, being seen all over the streets of Yerevan because the border is now open to Turkish tourists?
Sure.
Are they going to be
And
comfortable with that?
Turkish
Like
spies,
it's
Turkish agents, Turkish diversant, you know, everything. This is shock and mockery, what's happened. Armenians lived in Artsakh 3,000 years. Some artificial state created by Stalin and communists 100 years ago, Azerbaijan, told that it's our land that was created 100 years ago. It's a, it's a,
Mhm,
it's a mockery. It's impossible
mhm,
to imagine what's happened, really. I am not citizen of Armenia. I have no right to criticize somebody there. But
mhm,
As Armenian, uh, what I will do, I will create strong army. I will make mobilization. I will make renovation. Create a brigades of light infantry every month, and fight for
mhm.
Armenia. But I'm not citizen of Armenia. I have no right
Yeah.
to speak about it and to tell how to Armenians must act. This is the
You
problem.
know, if 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 Armenia goes to war with Azerbaijan again, I will be one of the first people to volunteer to enlist in the Armenian military from the states. I mean, I believe in the defense of Armenia, and I'm willing to take up arms against any of their invaders, whether it be Russia or it would be Azerbaijan. I personally, as a minister, would take up a gun and defend Armenia. I care about its territorial integrity. I care about human rights, and it's my principles that would
Yeah.
drive me to do such a thing. So,
Armenians need, Joel, that you will submit for consideration of President Donald Trump's real situation with Armenia and Armenians. This is necessary. This is very
yeah,
important. This is your mission.
I think it's very important, but I also think that the United States, especially the State Department, needs to have more conversations with the opposition parties in Armenia to discuss holistically and get a total perspective. Because Tigran, I mean, I was with Pashinyan's friends in Washington D.C. We had dinner together. We spent time. Arsen Tarosian and I spent time with these people, not because I agree with them politically, but because I want to see where they stand politically. I want to hear their arguments. I want to hear what they believe, why they believe it, and why they're doing what they do. And I want to get a completely unbiased and holistic perspective of the political system of Armenia and these various parties. So I don't refuse to meet with anybody in Armenia. And so if people see photos with me with this person or with that person, don't be shocked. I'm working diplomatically just to meet everybody and get a greater perspective.
Sure, I also have no any political interest in Armenia.
Yeah.
I have interest as Armenian.
Hmm.
The same is concerning Ukraine. I have zero political interest, but Ukraine is in my heart. Armenia is my heart. You know, you told very important things about Israel.
Hmm.
I would like to tell to Israelites the next. I had very good friends. I speak about senior rabbis, about high officials of Israel. I like Israel, and I want to tell to Israelites. Armenians never were enemies of Israel. All
Hmm.
our history we were friends,
Hmm.
except last 150 years.
Hmm.
But also we was no enemies these 150 years. No.
Hmm.
Armenians, thank you to all fellow Israelites to assist Armenia during genocide. We remember Lemkin. We remember Franz Werfel. And when my relatives were killed in Adana 1909, Raphael Lemkin first time created a term Holocaust to remember massacres of Armenians in Adana. Then
Yeah.
created a genocide to remember massacres of Armenians from 1915 to 1923. Two terms were created for Armenians, and Holocaust and genocide.
Hmm.
But I would like to tell the next. Armenia with Israel will be stronger. Armenia is potential and real alive for
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah.
We must be together.
100%.
We must be together.
100%.
Armenians has zero problem with uh, Jewish, zero problem. And
Hmm.
during Second World War, Armenian priests, Armenian soldiers, they save Jewish everywhere in Eastern Europe from
Yeah.
Holocaust.
Yeah.
Does it mean I am sure that cooperation between Israel and Armenia has huge perspective
Hmm.
because it's very
Of
close
course.
nations, very
And
close.
we need to work on that expediently, and we need to help develop those relations. And I'm also working on
Yeah,
that, and I look forward
yeah,
to my upcoming trip to Israel.
yeah.
But I just wanted to say as we close that I'm just honored to be on this uh, broadcast again, Tigran. I'm thankful for the opportunity, and
Thank you.
I'm excited to see what we're capable of doing, and to continue to expand the horizons of what is achievable for the Armenian people and for Ukrainians. And may God bless you, and God bless all your efforts and everything you do, and may God continue to expand your territory.
Yes, and God bless you, my dear Joel. We continue, we fight, we work, we move ahead. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I think next time, because is yes, our broadcast is too long. Next time we will speak about relations of China and USA. What will be happening? Because
we'll we'll
we
talk
planned
about that soon.
we plan to speak during this broadcast, but really it's too long, and we are tired, and it's night now. Yeah, possible next time we'll speak about it.
Yeah, I hear it's getting pretty late. I know it's very late. I've been gone all day working nonstop, and after being gone for 25 days abroad, my wife, who's
Yeah,
pregnant with our sixth
yes,
child, will
yes,
probably divorce me if I don't get off the
yes,
broadcast.
yes, yes, yes. My greetings to your wife. She's a wonderful person, brilliant person. Yes,
She loves
I
you a lot.
remember. I remember our conversation. I am sure everything will be okay and excellent. My wishes, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I respect you, your super intellect, and you as a son for me. Yeah, I told you, and you're similar to my eldest son. Yeah,
I love him.
my
He's a great
goodness.
guy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So we are together. We will fight, and with blessing of our Lord, we'll win. We sure will
That's
win.
right.
Thank you,
That's
my
right.
dear
We
brother.
we really enjoyed having you in DC with us during the
Uh,
inauguration and
yes,
getting
yeah,
to spend some quality
yeah,
time. That was fantastic, and we look forward to you coming back to the
yeah.
states and
Sure,
being able to
sure,
welcome you back
sure,
again.
sure, sure, sure. We will meet soon. Okay.
Yes.
See you, my
All
brother.
right. God bless you. Take
God
care.
God bless you. Say Amen. Amen. See you.
Amen.
Bye.